Riding through Clay County, you'll spot leisurely cows, charming churches, babbling brooks, and in the last couple years, as many as 8,000 head of cattle on one farm.
I've lived here my whole life, and I don't want it. I do not want that here.
That is the Browning Land and Cattle Company, a CAFO, or Concentrated Animal Feeding Operation, on 140 acres. 23-year-old Trace Browning raising thousands of cattle to about 800 pounds, then shipping them out west.
The smell is horrible.
But Browning never got a permit required by the state for more than 1,000 cattle. Now, that would have obligated him to put in environmental barriers to stop waste runoff from the start. The Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation issuing this violation notice in August of 2022, finding conditions of pollution on the site, with the runoff causing an objectionable color change to streams. Now you can see the brown water in the creek here near where we interviewed Angela, and foam caused by E. coli-filled runoff, according to TDEC.
Our kids and grandkids cannot play in this anymore. I mean, look at this.
You see the stuff underneath the water? That looks to me like it might be manure.
Neighbors like the Deckards say they're livid that their waterways are now contaminated. TDEC putting up these no swimming or fishing signs, finding dangerously high E. coli levels. This now contaminated Wilson Branch runs into several other tributaries, including the Trace Creek, which also flows into the Barren River watershed in Kentucky.
He has been down here and we showed him what it was doing to the branch.
Any improvement, any change?
No, ma'am.
TDEC slapping 3 more violations, one citing continued discharge of contaminated water, noting black water flowing from the property.
It used to be clear. And now it's, I don't know what this red stuff is, and that brown stuff is, and the green stuff. It used to be clear.
18 complaints, many by local residents, were filed with TDEC.
And this is what it had.
The Deckards saying they lost a rash of calves on their farm of about 50 cows.
We've buried 16 calves in the last 2 years.
This autopsy finding E. coli and shipping fever, which is typically associated with transported cattle. Last December, the state of Tennessee filed a lawsuit against the Browning Cattle Company, citing illegal discharges, illegal CAFO operations, and illegal land clearing. I reached out to Trace Browning, and he put me in touch with one of his lawyers, agriculture attorney Dave Moore. Browning reducing the number of cattle to avoid getting shut down.
Today we only have about 1,888 cattle.
Moore disputes the pollution, particularly the impact of the E. coli, what source it came from, and how state regulators collected the samples.
I think they made a mistake, and we've actually filed documents in the court to identify that. And the closest sampling that they took was 7,889 feet.
Moore says the Browning CAFO fuels the local economy and that Browning has worked with regulators since the first violation to install a list of environmental protections.
Browning Cattle Company has done anything and everything anyone asked. So starting from the very first day, July 28, 2022, why don't you put in buffers and pull the cattle in with fencing? 2 miles of fencing later, 48 acres of buffer, which is more than any buffer you'll see probably in the whole north part of the state, if not the whole state, goes in.
Moore says Browning is also putting in more retention ponds and a plan for manure management, all still awaiting approval. Browning's long-term goal, getting that permit approved.
We have an application in for a maximum of 8,000 cattle.
Does the Browning Cattle Company plan on paying to remediate any of these streams?
Yeah, we're going to take TDEC's lead on that.
Some neighbors hoping TDEC's lead will fix the problem, or they say better yet, stomp out a cattle operation of that size.
He's polluted the community. We're a tight community.
It's a great place to live, but it has really changed in the last 3 years.
A judge just handed down a ruling that says the Browning Cattle Company has to get down to 999 cattle while this permit approval process is still going through, and they are still asking for up to 9,000 head of cattle. Now, before any approvals are granted, any permits, there has to be a public hearing, and you could bet many neighbors will be showing up to make sure their voices are heard. I'm Kelly Avellino for Fox 17 News, your Code Red station.